So hello, welcome. It is of course me, Martin Anderson. I missed last week. It was meant to be a Royal Rumble special. Between being ill and finishing dissertation for uni, we thought it was best we take a week off. And this week we come back and be a little bit more energized. I'll be honest, I kind of missed talking about wrestling. I did have a week where all I talked about was this man, Nigel Farage. That's all I spoke about. Not because I'm a fan of his, just because that was my dissertation topic. And it's interesting to see that I picked the week of wrestling that actually threw up some really interesting stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the wrestling stories that are out there. We also have some CWF related stuff later on. I'm sure if you're watching this, you saw the little spoiler that was put up by Stuart Murphy, where he said he was going to reveal participant number 2. And he was a tease even for me as well, because he sent me the exact video that was uploaded on Headlocks and Headphones YouTube account, which was, I will announce participant 2, and then he said he was going to do it on the show. So, yeah, at some point later on, Murphy is going to join us. I'm not sure if he's going to be joining us live or if it's going to be live to tape, but he is going to be joining us on the show. Other than that, we're going to be talking about wrestling news. We're going to be talking about Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and AEW. And to be honest, we're not going to be going massively in depth. However, there's a couple of things I want to talk about from these shows, because I feel, having taken the week off and kind of catching back up on them, some of the stuff that happened last week was good. Some of the stuff that happened last week people thought was good, and I'm intrigued to understand why, because the very same people were the ones bitching about it when another company did it. But that seems to be kind of par for the course right now. Anyway, before we get into anything, let's get into the wrestling news. We are, of course, into the road to WrestleMania season now. One of the things we have to talk about, if we're going to talk about the road to WrestleMania, is, of course, the fact that last year at WrestleMania, WWE had a special guest host. That was Rob Gronkowski. And everybody thought, when he signed his contract with WWE, that was him. He was going to be in WWE. Now, it was the off season, so he was literally just there killing time until he found a contract with another team. Boy, did he pick the right team. Rob Gronkowski and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the Super Bowl over the Kansas City Chiefs 31-9. Now, an interesting thing here, and this is slightly separate away from wrestling, the first time I ever met the owner of CWF, Stuart Murphy, was last year on the day of the Super Bowl. And that was where we ended up in the pub and sat watching the Super Bowl. So whilst it's been a few years since I've watched the Super Bowl properly at home, I've got quite a few friends who are proper NFL fans. So I kind of follow it based on the fact that they talk about it. So it's interesting to see a WWE guy getting awards for good things, not WWE guys getting slaughtered for being racist, Hulk Hogan, or for being racist, Donald Trump. Actually, there seems to be a pattern there, doesn't there? We won't go down that route. Anyway, congratulations to the former WWE 24/7 champion. Although the person who's probably upstaging him might be that certain NFL player who's now won more Super Bowls than anybody and more MVPs at the Super Bowl than anybody. So Tom Brady, of course, being possibly the greatest NFL player of our generation, or probably of any generation as far as most people are concerned. You don't win Super Bowls unless you're at least very good. So to know that he's won the most Super Bowls ever is a massive achievement, and something that, when it comes to these legitimate sports, and I hate to say that term, but when it comes to legitimate sports like the NFL, there's often like a short, you see people, they get their contract, and after a couple of years they kind of travel around different teams because they kind of burn out. Tom Brady, clearly somebody who hasn't burnt out. So it's kind of cool that a former WWE guy is the champion of the NFL as well. Now, we move on, because WrestleMania is very quickly coming around again. WWE officials are considering having cardboard cutouts at the Raymond James Stadium after the NFL did it at the Super Bowl. Now, WrestleVotes said, text from a source just now saying WWE will 100% discuss having cutouts again. Says it's beyond dumb to not, and the Raymond James Stadium looks wonderful for what it was. Now, with the Super Bowl at the Raymond James Stadium, home of WrestleMania 37 in 9 weeks, WWE has been against the idea of filling the empty seats with cutouts, as the NFL has done. But how it looked at the Super Bowl was really good. That stadium looked pretty close to full. I don't know if anybody who watches is fans of football here in Scotland or in England, but there just seems to be a major lack of atmosphere at games, even though they put the sound in. It's just when you watch old clips and you see the fans in attendance as well and you see the reactions, it's a huge part of why I think we can't wait to get people back in and be watching wrestling again. Now, the story that seemed to kind of come out of nowhere after his return to TV was the release of Steve Cutler, who apparently had heat with Vince McMahon because he attended a New Year's party and caught COVID-19. Now, the people who were at this party were all people who were being tested regularly and stuff, but Deonna Purrazzo has come out and basically commented on this, saying, "We attended a New Year's Eve party like dozens of other people. When Steve tested positive prior to SmackDown, he was sent home and immediately started quarantine. He was not at work whilst being positive. Stop misconstruing the truth for clickbait." Wow, that was easy to say. And WWE did release him on February the 4th, and no other details have officially been released, but some of the people like Dave Meltzer are discussing the failure as being the reason why he's being released. Now, Fightful Select did specifically say that he had heat with Vince McMahon over contracting COVID-19. It was also said, despite the Knights of the Round Table, which is Cutler and Wesley Blake's attempts to get back on TV with Baron Corbin, they were rebuffed and allegedly stemmed from Cutler's positive test. So somebody's at least telling them that this is all related to COVID. So I think part of the problem is when Vince McMahon managed to persuade Roman Reigns to return last year, part of that was due to the fact that he was able to demonstrate that the environment was safe. And if people are taking risks like that, then that's putting Vince McMahon in a bad place. I understand why he would maybe want to punish him, taking his job away from him. Certainly, I think seems a bit weird, especially when you hear Steve Cutler was one of the guys who, remember the stories a few months ago about Otis, Omos, and several others being sent back to developmental to work on their stuff in between shows, which, people were like, well, this is ridiculous. Why are they doing that? Well, this is the stuff they'd be doing if they were doing house shows, folks. This is what they'd be out doing. It's called reps. They're out just doing more things, learning and practicing things. And it's not so much about practicing bumps, but about learning new things, improving your promos. These things happen at house shows and we don't have them anymore. So the idea that these talent will somehow get better performing once a week is ridiculous. Some will, but in other cases, it's about confidence. You look at Cesaro for one. Cesaro is as good a wrestler as he was the day he signed for the company. But being out there in front of a crowd, finding his comfort, finding that area where he's able to perform in the way he is, he hasn't improved as a wrestler, in my opinion. He's improved everything else, and that comes with practice. It comes with time. It comes with feeling and growing in that role. So Steve Cutler was somebody who was actually being trusted to help work with these guys, and he was taking bumps for them and stuff. So it's interesting to see that they would sack him. It does show exactly how much they're putting into the future of the company. They want people to actually start working hard, and let's accept there is a pandemic, but the company needs to still develop and grow. So it's good to see that's happening. But at the same time, if you're being trusted to work with all these people and you're going out and taking risks like going to a New Year's party, then expect to be punished. They're probably not expecting to lose your job. Now, somebody who actually gained a job this week is a former University of Central Florida offensive lineman, Parker Boudreaux. Now, he's agreed a deal with WWE and will be coming to work for the company shortly. Two things from this: he looks the double of a young Brock Lesnar, and on top of that, Paul Heyman's very high on him, and he looks we don't know how he's going to wrestle. We don't know how he's going to take to the business. But if you were looking for somebody to put on a poster, this is the future. This is the guy who could be the next big thing. Now, what is quite funny already Matt Riddle has put up a tweet saying, this guy looks like Brock Lesnar, but he doesn't hate me, so he'd probably have a match with me. So there's already people realizing this guy has something. And from what we hear, he did really well at his tryout. So that's kind of a great thing that WWE are still looking to hire new names that offer something a bit different. Now, it's great to hire people from the indies. It's great to hire people with lots of experience, but that doesn't always equal success in WWE. Ask Tyler Breeze, ask several other people. You can have all this success in the world working in smaller companies or even working in NXT, but the second you step up, it's a little bit different. So if WWE can take somebody without years and years of experience and actually show them the way that they do things, they can flourish. Brock Lesnar is one of them. He flourished by learning the WWE way, and there's several others that have done it over the years. The Miz may have done training in other places, but the Miz formulated who he is in the WWE. So it's cool to see that WWE still want to take in these different type of guys. And you know what? It's very interesting. They're trying to return now to the athletes that they had before. And in my mind, I think if you're going to be taking in athletes, people will say, well, that's kind of a negative because that's going to be bad. It's just more big guys. I don't think that signing the guy who is the next big thing is necessarily going to be detrimental to these other guys. WWE's always been a place where it's a big guy show. But then you've had Rey Mysterio. You have these other talents who are not the big guy. And the reason is because it's meant to be like Cirque du Soleil, Vince's favorite show. He wants to see something for everybody. And that, for me, is a huge, huge thing. WWE signing athletes again. That was JR's mantra when he was signing talent. Get in real athletes and show them what to do. And then if they can be coached in NFL, if they can be coached at basketball, then they're going to be very good at being coached at wrestling. That doesn't necessarily mean they all succeed. But if you can be coached in one thing, you can be coached in something else. So it's cool to see WWE returning somewhat to a more traditional base for what they're doing. Now, Dave Meltzer has actually said that Cesaro's signed a new contract and it will be for the foreseeable future, which doesn't give massive ideas of terms or anything. And the reason for that is a lot of these guys are now keeping their contracts to themselves because you don't want to say to your friend, well, okay, you just had your wages cut and now I'm getting a deal with extra pay because now that pay came from your pocket. It's noted that he signed a deal earlier, possibly last year, and he would have seen a high-profile role in a recent episode of SmackDown. The gauntlet match that Adam Pearce won on SmackDown last month saw a big babyface performance by Nakamura, but it was meant to go to Cesaro. Now, he did note that Daniel Bryan came up with the idea of the match where the good guy would run through the match and get screwed over at the end by Roman Reigns, and he wanted Cesaro in the spot. Since Cesaro hasn't been signed, the decision made to put Nakamura in instead. Now, since that point, this is the argument Meltzer's saying, and there's some people saying he signed last year, but others are saying the fact that he hadn't signed is why he didn't get put in that spot when the Nakamura was. To be honest, I think as long as he's staying, he's gonna do well. And people are saying, well, he should have a world title run. I'm sure he doesn't care about a title run. He's on TV every week. He's in something creative now. He's not just stuck in dark matches or early matches. He's actually doing something. He's actually in some of the main events when you think about it, the stuff with Roman Reigns. So it's very cool to see Cesaro's going to be sticking with WWE because I've always said that Cesaro, I said it earlier, he's as good a wrestler as he was the day he signed, but he's improved in the areas where people would argue he was weakest. His ability to do promos is greater. His connection with the crowd pre-pandemic was bigger than it had ever been. So he certainly, when fans come back, I think the way they're booking him, he should be one of the top guys, and he probably will be. The fans are going to pop majorly for him. Now, one of the people that did get a big pop was Edge, who says he's back in the ring not to relive the glory days, but he wants to give fans something they haven't already seen. Now, he spoke with Brent Brookhouse of CBS Sports, and this is what he had to say. I didn't come back just to do the Greatest Hits tour. That's not why I came back. I didn't just want it to be the regurgitated Greatest Hits. I wanted to come back because I wanted to tell some compelling stories. I wanted to get in with a lot of talent so that if I could impart wisdom from 29 years of doing this, in terms of trying to tell a story, that's really exciting for me. I have so much of this talent, and it's exciting to be able to get in with them. Did I necessarily know that I was going to try and work towards WrestleMania? No. A lot of those things are out of your hands. I didn't know I was going to be put the work in to be able to do so if called upon. That's part of my responsibility in coming back. So he got himself ready, and if called upon, he would be in whatever spot he was needed in. And one of the great things about the Edge character is, yeah, it could be argued that this is the Greatest Hits tour, but he said he's back full time. As long as they want him full time, he's back full time. I think we'll tell very quickly how his neck holds up and stuff. But from what he's been saying, he is physically in a much, much better place. So I'm intrigued to where Edge is going to go for his title match. We'll talk about that a little bit when we kind of rush through the TV shows later on, because I want to get to talking about some opinion about last week's TV. But let's move on to there's a lawsuit regarding Randy Orton's tattoos. Now, the lawsuit over Randy Orton in 2K Games in relation to the usage of Randy Orton's tattoos has been set for September 20th, 2021. There's going to be a court case in the U.S. Southern District of Illinois, East St. Louis. It was originally set for February 16th, but it's been delayed to September. The tattoo artist, Catherine Alexander, filed a lawsuit over the use of Orton's tattoos, which were of her design. The publishers used the designs of Orton's likeness in the game. It did not get her permission. These tattoos include tribal tattoos on Orton's forearm, a Bible verse on his arm, a dove, a rose, and a skull. I think this is stupid. You do the tattoo, it's on somebody's arm. You shouldn't still be able to claim copyright. It belongs now to that person who paid you. Randy Orton isn't making money on the tattoos, you absolute clown. Randy Orton's likeness is in a video game. The tattoo is something he paid you for. He didn't sign a contract with you to get goddamn royalties. What kind of world are we living in? I have tattoos. Is the tattoo artist going to sue me because I just put them on YouTube? No. The whole point of a tattoo is because it's personal, it's yours, you pay for it. It's between you and the artist. When you show it, you're not doing it for commercial gain. Nobody is. It's your story. She is suing Randy Orton because of his story. That is one of the worst things I've heard in recent months is somebody being sued over tattoos. And that for me is just, it's ridiculous. If you're an artist and you want to control your work, I fully support that. But if you put a tattoo on somebody's arm, you don't have, that's not yours. You don't have ownership over that. That's theirs. I think we get into very muddy waters when we get to the point where people start suing because their tattoo is featured in a video game. And if you are a tattoo artist who disagrees with me, that's great. Please come on the show. Let's talk about it, because I think there's a massive disconnect here. Instead of suing, what if they actually did something to promote her? She could get money. She could make money with her talent, as opposed to stealing money from somebody she's been paid to work for. I get when people argue that you produce music, you should be paid for it when it's used. Absolutely. You should be paid if you produce video content, when you produce designs for t-shirts, which can be sold in huge numbers. But a person's likeness is not something that you can take control over because you've done work for them. WWE take ownership of likeness in a contract that's signed between the two people where there is consent to that. A tattoo artist who retrospectively wants to sue for use in a video game, there is no agreement there. Randy Orton also he wasn't saying, yeah, put my tattoos in the game because I'm going to make money out of it. His paycheck didn't change. And that is just, for me, it's just stupid. If you're a tattoo artist and you feel that way, I think there's going to be massive changes if this case goes in the favor of the artist. I think the tattoo business is going to suffer because a lot of people are going to realize, well, wait a second, if I get tattoos, I'm going to now need to get ownership of these. And now we create an entire new market for lawyers to get rich for no bloody reason. Why do we need lawyers to get rich? Anyway, Ric Flair's stepson has released a new song on Spotify. If you haven't heard it, he's called Sebastian, and the title is "Have You Been?" It's on Apple Music, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Go out of your way to check it out. I always like to give people a chance to go check out something new. But something that isn't new, but is still of relevance, is a tweet by Dustin Rhodes. Just got off the phone with Terry Funk. He's in a lot of pain. I could use some prayers. One of the greatest. Hashtag true legends to ever be in the ring. Appreciate y'all. Now, one of the things that came from this was also the revelation that Terry Funk has asked fans to stop sending him things to sign because he physically can't do it. I have heard several stories from people who have sent things to Terry Funk years ago, and they would get back, t-shirts for free. They would get, one guy I spoke to got something that had been used in ECW, just stuck in the package and sent to him, and it's because Terry Funk is just one of those, if something's of no use to him and it can put a smile on somebody's face, Terry Funk is one of the nicest guys. To hear how badly he's struggling is a shame. I know he lost his wife a little while ago, and I know he's probably struggling in more ways than just physically, but to know that it's at the point now where he's asking fans, please, I can't give you what you want. This is a guy who would put his body on the line on a weekly basis, so it's upsetting to see. But go out of your way to show some love to Terry Funk. Don't ask him for to autograph something, but I know there is avenues for getting in touch with Terry Funk and for sending him things. Go out of your way to find. I'm not going to put them up because I know some people will still send him stuff to be signed. But if you're a nice person, go out of your way, send some sort of messages, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and get a card and send it to him. And I know it's probably not that important, but it's a nice thing to do, particularly if you've enjoyed what he's done. The contact details are out there. You can find them. Just go out of your way and you will find them. Now let's talk about contact. I did mention this on Twitter the other week, but I've been contacted by very bad fake Twitter accounts. Two by Mandy Rose, one by Natalia, and one by Sonya Deville. And because it's obvious they were scammers, I messaged them and just basically tried to waste their time as much as physically possible. And one of the things that happened was they asked what they could do for me. And jokingly, I sent back a gift that said, send nudes. I wasn't actually asking for nudes. But if they're scammers, they're going to come back with something to try and facilitate that to get bank details or money out of you. Now, the next step was for me to say, listen, I don't think you are Mandy Rose. Prove that you are. So they sent a video that was taken from Instagram. And it was the same situation with the Natalia account. I'll put the picture up so you can see exactly how bad the effort is. The photoshopping here is really bad. But it got so bad that they said they were going to send me nudes. I just had to tell them how much I was willing to pay. Obviously, I wasn't really asking for them, so I'm not going to give them bank details or anything, but they put quite a lot of effort in. So this is my public service announcement. If you're on Twitter and Natalia or Mandy Rose or any of the females randomly message you and ask if you would like something from them, it's probably not the person you think you're speaking to. It really isn't. So just be careful out there. There's a lot of people on Twitter trying to take advantage of wrestling fans, and don't be a victim, because it's not something we want to do. Now, WWE ring announcer Greg Hamilton is now engaged. He shared the news on Twitter. She said yes. Can't believe this is my life. Now, Greg Hamilton did have a little bit of an issue the other week. He looked very unsteady and he stumbled over his words and stuff, and that appears to have been due to the fact that his now fiance was actually suffering from COVID, I believe. So it's good to see that they've recovered and they're actually taking some positive steps in life. So again, if you're on Twitter, send some love to Greg Hamilton, wish him congratulations, he's going to be married. I hope that his marriage is better than my first marriage. This present one is fine. I mean, Zoe Styles hasn't been on the show in recent weeks, but she's still producing the show. She's still involved behind the scenes. She's still helping out with bits and bobs. And that marriage is going fine. I mean, I'm not having to trade her in yet, so that's at least a positive thing. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about quite seriously. I don't want to talk about them in the wrestling news section, so we're going to have a separate section to talk about these two. And this is kind of a serious section that we're going to have. And a lot of it's about mental health and important life decisions. Okay, so firstly, something that's very close to my heart, and I've dealt with recently as well, is mental health. This week, Shaul Guerrero took to Twitter, revealing she's taken an immediate break from wrestling so she can work on her mental health. She said she had a very scary mental health crisis and she'll be taking time off to deal with it. Now, this is the official statement, which I'm going to put up on screen as well. Official, today I am withdrawing from all performances and appearances scheduled in conjunction with wrestling. After a very scary mental health illness crisis, I am no longer advised by loved ones and professionals to participate in high-stress events at this time. I deeply apologize to the fans who've been respectful and supportive of me and who continue to do so. I will be using this time to seek the help I need, re-establish my eating disorder treatment, and hopefully get answers and solutions to reach a healthy mental state. I apologize for the inconvenience and disappointment this may bring. Best, Shaul Guerrero. Now, firstly, the fact that she felt the need to make this statement, I've seen a few people saying, this is attention seeking. I think it's accountability more than attention seeking. She's acknowledging her issues, putting them out there so that it kind of places a little bit of pressure on herself in a good way to actually try and tackle what's going on. Secondly, she's been open and honest about perhaps some of this being rooted in an eating disorder. Now, in a business that's based heavily on appearance, certainly wrestling for some people is a trigger for these type of things. Moving beyond that, mental health for a lot of people during lockdown has been horrible. I myself was admitted to a mental hospital in September, something which probably sounds scary and people will make assumptions about it, but it was something that I needed at the time, and sometimes you need to get help. So the fact that she's doing so and the fact that she's being public and open about it is a great thing and something that demonstrates that she maybe hasn't figured out everything yet, but she knows she's trying, and that's important. So if you're in a position where you have any issues, I'm going to pop some stuff on screen. So if you are in a position where you need some support, some help, there's going to be some links scrolling along the screen just now for you. And in addition to that, and I don't want to speak on Murphy's behalf, but I know he said this as well. Myself, Stuart Murphy, we are both more than happy to have anybody who listens to this show who follows either us on Twitter or is watching what's happening with CWF. Please reach out, even if you just want to talk wrestling. We don't even need to have you mention the fact that you're going through anything. Sometimes that escape is a really good thing, and it's there. If you go through Twitter, it's at CWF Murphy Stew or at Headlock Lockdown, which is my Twitter as well. Even if you want to do it through the YouTube channel or you want to go through Facebook. My name is Martin Anderson on Facebook, and you're more than welcome to come and have a little chat. You don't have to tell me what's going on, but the last thing we need as a community is people feeling isolated and alone. We're already the niche geeky market. We're already that area of the world where people say, oh, that's fake, and we get shunned and it's not serious. Yeah, it's not serious. It's only $1 billion industry. So if you're out there and you're struggling with mental health and you haven't done anything about it or you're embarrassed, there's going to be plenty of help out there for you. It might not work. It might not work. And that sounds defeatist, but sometimes you have to try more than one type of help. And when you do find the one that helps you, it's such a big weight off your shoulders. Don't feel bad about asking people for help. And this sounds like I'm just trying to preach, but I've been there. Just a matter of weeks ago, I had what can loosely be described as a proper breakdown. Part of the reason why last week's show didn't go ahead was because of my need to recover. And let's be open and honest. I enjoy doing this show. I get to sit and talk about wrestling. I sometimes have people on. We talk about wrestling, have a bit of fun related to CWF. But seriously, this show is an escape for me. So when I can no longer even do the escape, then I know I'm struggling. And that was the problem for me, was looking at exactly where I can no longer do the show because my mental health isn't good enough. And I blew up at people. I know my wife took some of it. I know that certain friends took some of it. And if you're out there and you're struggling, you may end up doing the same things that I did. You may end up doing worse, but you have to at some point reach out and just talk. Doesn't have to be about wrestling. You know, I'm a football fan. I'm a movie fan. I love my music. I'm more than happy to talk about stuff. I don't sleep very well, so I'm usually up till 3, 4 in the morning sometimes. The curse of having borderline personality disorder is sometimes your brain just doesn't shut off. And I'm doing it drug-free. I'm not taking any medication to control my mental health. I'm trying to control it myself, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I know this seems like I'm going very, very serious on what's meant to be a wrestling show, but please, if you are feeling low, give me a message. Message Murphy. Tell him I told you to message him. And just chat, because that 30-minute chat might be the difference. And I know Murphy's had mental health issues in the past, and he won't mind me saying that based on the context that we're talking. But I know JJ Andrews has had mental health issues in the past. And sometimes having a conversation about nothing is actually really good. Particularly when we have to social distance, and I haven't been in uni since March last year. I'm having to do my uni work by basically going into the bedroom and closing the door. So it feels like I'm kind of abandoning my family, but I'm also in touching distance. So I should be able to just sit and spend the time with them. It's a confusing and scary time. If you're out there and you've caught this show and you're just thinking to yourself, do you know what? I don't know. I don't think I want to get involved. That's fine. There's details scrolling through this entire segment, so you can actually reach out to somebody anonymously and you can speak to them and get as much help as you possibly can. Do not suffer. It's going to be suffering, because anybody with mental health issues will tell you it doesn't matter how happy you seem. It sometimes wipes the energy out of you. So, you know, it's all down to taking that step. If you've never taken the step, it will make a big difference. I'm smiling because I've been to therapy. I've been on the drugs. I've been in mental health facilities. I've kind of done it all. And the last thing that I think other people should have to go through is dealing with it on their own. So, final word on this: if you're going through something and you don't want to talk to your family, details are on the screen. And if you want to, you can always message me. Stuart Murphy's Twitter DMs are always open as well. Or even message the CWF one, and either Stuart Murphy or his admin team will be happy to speak to you. None of us are alone. Even if we live alone, we don't have to be. Zoom is a great thing, and we never have to be alone. Anyway, that's my public service message for today. That's probably the most serious conversation we've had since the Speaking Out movement. But yeah, that was good to kind of talk about the fact that I was in a mental health institution. I'm going to stop there. But that was good. I enjoyed that. So now, the other serious topic that we have to talk about is something that showed up this week. And honestly, when this showed up, it took my breath away. I was like, whoa, I did not see that coming. How this has been portrayed in the media is very interesting. Now, you don't know what I'm talking about yet, but we'll get there. So most of the stories I've seen from non-wrestling sites are talking about this big burly wrestler and how big and muscly and violent he was, and talking about the fact that he's now transitioning to being a woman. And how it's being framed by some places seems friendly, but there's a massive undercurrent here. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about Tyler Rex, Gabe Tuft, who's transitioning to being a female. She sat down for her first post-transition interview with the Extras, Billy Bush. There are highlights out there. Now, let's even look at, I'm going to read a small piece from how WrestleZone have actually published what they were sent by Extra. Tuft was known as a powerhouse pro wrestler who appeared on Raw, SmackDown, and WrestleMania before leaving the ring to spend more time with her wife and daughter and to create Body Spartan Fitness. Despite all that success, she was wrestling with a deeply personal secret. The 280-pound titan that the world saw was not who Rex saw in the mirror. She told Billy, when I was 10, when my parents weren't home, I would sneak into my mom's closet, try out her clothes, and it just felt right. But I suppressed it my whole life just because of society, knowing that people didn't accept it, so I pushed it down as far as I could. Honestly, if they are happy now, great. I am fully supportive of the trans community in ways that I won't talk about here, but I am fully supportive of the community. I'm not a fan of how they seem to have framed this. Now, I know some people say, well, you're probably just looking at it the wrong way. They don't mean any harm by it. And I think that's the point. They don't mean harm in this. But if you look at pictures of Tyler Rex as Tyler Rex, and you look at pictures of Gabby and what she looks like now, in terms of body shape, there hasn't been a lot of shrinkage. There hasn't been a massive change. Certain changes, obviously. But the thing that gets me here is it's almost like they're saying, was a powerhouse, was a big guy, was this 280-pound monster, and now they're not. Well, the body hasn't changed. It just seems very gendered and very, and this might seem like I'm overthinking it, but it just seems like they're taking something that's very serious and very important. And what they've done is they've taken gendered stereotypes and kind of bandied them around in a way where they can turn around and say, do you know what? Yeah, we're not being mean. But it feels like the person writing it is kind of making the suggestion that they were this big hulk of a character and now they're just a woman. I may be overthinking that. But let's be honest. The portrayal of the trans community is often very, very poor in the media. And sometimes the way that these things are worded portrays an image in somebody's head. I've spoken to people who are both supportive and non-supportive of the trans community in the time since this story came out. And other people share my opinion in that it almost, how they've framed this is almost like, in physicality, this is a step down. And it's not, it's a lateral move. I don't care what anyone wants to say. It's a lateral move. The change that has been made by Tyler Rex, Gabe, to become Gabby, hasn't changed anything other than how they personally identify. But the portrayal seems to just be changed. And I think some of that needs to change. I think it's almost creating the idea that, yeah, they were portraying this idea of a big burly man, but that wasn't who they were on the inside. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I think there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, one of the things that really pissed me off about this as well was people who said, oh, well, now he can be booked in AEW and face Nyla Rose, and they can fight for the women's title. I think wrestling is probably the last thing on Gabby's mind. If bookings happen from this, if there's some interest in this, I did a project on identity where I interviewed some transgender wrestlers, and they told me that they have very supportive promoters, but they do understand that some other promoters exploit the almost, and I hate to say this term because it feels like people think this is how I'm looking at it, but it almost exploits the freak show element. These promoters are not doing this to give these people a chance to work. They're doing it because of look, we're booking the midgets. We're booking, back in the day, we're booking the midgets. We've got the girls in town. Andre's coming through. That mentality needs to go. AEW have booked Nyla Rose horribly. That's got bugger all to do with her gender and just bad booking. And you can criticize the bad booking, but there's a lot of people saying, well, Nyla Rose, and Jim Cornette's one of them. Nyla Rose should be running through them. It's a guy. Clearly should be running through them. Or there's a story to tell and something will happen down the line. And it doesn't have to be this person used to be a guy. This has to happen. China was a female. China would destroy half the people on the WWE roster right now. Probably more than half. Gender is just whatever you make of it and whatever you think. And I know this is a serious side to this week's show, but I think it's important. Looking at these important issues is something we have to do. I think how we portray things has to be looked at. Nyla Rose was kind of the first mainstream transgender wrestler. There are others, but this was the first mainstream one that there was the opportunity to kind of create positive change. I don't think Gabby's looking to be booked. I don't think wrestling's what the interest is. There's a fitness business there, and there is a lot of work to be done mentally from what we can see. But you know what? Screw it. Yeah, if you've got issues with somebody making that change in their life, screw it. You're not the important one. And to see somebody do that, and I know there's a few people, much like the Shaw Guerrero story I mentioned, they're talking about this idea that this is attention seeking. And this isn't attention seeking, this is taking ownership. The problem is if the Twitter handle was to change and then the pictures were to change and these things were to happen, what you would have is judgment, lots of questions and stuff. This is almost like, a lot of people say steer into the skid when something's happening and just make the best of it. This is, getting the training so that you don't skid. That's what's happening here. And Gabby is trying to control the situation so that her mental health is in the best place. And that's what we need to do with everything. This is kind of the whole point of this. A lot of people judging, a lot of very poorly worded articles being put out there in relation to this. Even the one that was done in conjunction with Gabby was worded in a very strange way. I mean, it could have been worded differently. I feel it would have been equally as relevant. But do you know what? The thing that gets me is during the interview, Gabby said one thing, and this is in relation to the young child that her and her wife have, which is this. It's an ongoing conversation. I told her, sweetheart, I'm not going to go out in public right now and go outside. She goes, why? I'm afraid that people might make fun of me and it might affect you. She leans over and gives me the biggest hug, and she says, Daddy, I will never make fun of you. That sums up this thing. Children haven't built up this bias, this desire to just care enough about this stuff. And I think that it's a massive step for somebody to come out and do this anyway. But for somebody to come out and do this and go on national television and do it and take ownership of it and understand the impact this is going to have on people's lives, it's a huge thing. This seems like this show is all going to be serious. So we're going to leave that there. There's a lot of work to be done on that topic. There's a lot of work that needs to be done overall on that topic. But good for you. I mean, if that's what you want to do, it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. But, be you. There's no harm in being you. And if people don't like it, fuck them. So let's talk about the wrestling that we missed. Last week, the Royal Rumble took place where we saw pretty much no titles changed hands. We did see the women's tag team titles change hands, which we expected to allow Asuka to not have to defend the tag titles in the run-up to WrestleMania. That was exactly what we expected. The Royal Rumbles, Bianca Belair won. Rhea Ripley, who was my choice, was the person she knocked out. Although Rhea Ripley's feet touched the floor, Bianca Belair's feet touched the floor, so Rhea Ripley technically won. So I was right in the end. I usually am. Ask my wife. But interesting to see where they went with the men's one. I very quickly called when Randy Orton left. I called Orton coming out and looking like he was going to cost Edge the shot. A lot of people very down on the Royal Rumble this year. Vince McMahon wasn't there. Adam Pearce was lead booker for the female one, and the male one, apparently Jamie Noble took the lead on. Kevin Nash had a story this week where he was talking about the fact that when he returned to the Rumble a few years ago, Jamie Noble was the one that booked his spot, and everything was booked so that, essentially the rope would get pulled down and Kevin Nash would go over and get knocked out by Roman Reigns. And for some reason, Jamie Noble just kept wanting to put more and more stuff in, so it just looked really, really awkward. And they had Kevin Nash doing more than he should have and taking more than he should have from Roman Reigns. So whether you agree with that or not is not the issue here. It's just, Roman probably loved being involved with Kevin Nash and loved how it was booked, but Kevin wasn't so keen on it. And that sums up the Royal Rumble for me. There's a lot of people really keen on it. A lot of people saying Edge shouldn't have won. I think the fact that Edge won creates quite a lot of interest for me in terms of where they're going to go with this, because we now have the idea of who's Edge going to choose. Is it going to be Roman Reigns? Is it going to be Drew McIntyre? Or is it going to be the NXT champion? Now, for me, I think if he's coming back and going for the NXT title, that's wasted value. I think they've begun Sheamus versus Drew, which is basically a long friendship ending. Which, come on, we said this on the show. This is the most obvious. They're foreshadowing of this. They started this from day one. You knew he was turning. This is just what happens. They couldn't just have them be friends. So that leads me to think that Roman Reigns versus Edge will be the match at WrestleMania, where he gets to go back to his spiritual home of SmackDown and kind of dominate the brands. But what was quite interesting was it was Drew and Edge having a little confrontation. That was when Sheamus came out and ended up attacking Drew McIntyre. Matt Riddle defeated Bobby Lashley by DQ, and Bobby Lashley kind of losing it a little bit, which was kind of funny. There was, of course, Carlito and Jeff Hardy, who got reunited on the show, which I thought was kind of cool. But for me, the talking point was the fact that Bad Bunny was actually on Miz TV. I don't enjoy Bad Bunny's music at all. Not my style. But, what he did at Royal Rumble looked very cool. And I think on top of that, Damian Priest looked really good in defeating The Miz. Good debut for Damian Priest, somebody who I have very high hopes for. In saying that, this women's tag team, Naomi and Lana just randomly thrown together and getting a title shot. It seems weird, but it all stems from Lacey Evans distracting Charlotte. So I'm intrigued where that angle's going. I'm not going to be watching the whole of, discussing the whole of all the shows, but they're kind of some of the cool takeaways. I was a big fan of Jackson Riker and Elias versus Jeff Hardy and Carlito. Those guys that should be in WWE long term. I think MVP made his return at the Rumble, got a job as a producer, and ended up getting an on-screen role. I think Carlito, who's still working, like out in the Indies, this is not his first match in 10 years. He's still working. He knows the mechanics of everything. He's very, very talented. Carlito is somebody who could still work, still do very good stuff on TV. A big fan of his return. Hopefully it becomes something a bit more permanent, although rumors of him becoming an agent or producer, haven't seen that confirmed yet, although I hope to see that very soon. Alexa Bliss defeated Nikki Cross. We also saw Edge defeat Randy Orton. Now, in the final moments, the haunting Alexa Bliss suddenly appeared on the turnbuckle with strange black substance oozing from her mouth. The horrifying image made Orton lose focus, and Edge executed the spear for the victory. Now, that is a direct quote from WWE.com. For me, this was the rubber match, the decider, the final, the absolute. We're not going to see Randy Orton versus Edge again in a top-level match. I've enjoyed their feud, and to continue having more matches there would just lessen the value of what they've already done. It would cheapen it as far as I'm concerned. Now we move to NXT. For anybody out there who is a fan of NXT, the stuff they're doing is great. They are losing talent. They lost Damian Priest this week, but he wasn't in the title picture. He's somebody who can offer a lot in the main roster. On paper, there's a lot lost in this brand. But when you look at the card, and Tommaso Ciampa and Thatcher beat Undisputed Era on the night, and you also saw Santos Escobar looking good, Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez beating Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter. In-ring, the stuff was great. You then had Edge show up, and there was the confrontation between Finn Balor, Pete Dunne, with Edge in the foreground as well. I think that's just a tease. There's talk of the NXT title match being on one of the 2 nights of WrestleMania. Big fan of Finn Balor versus Pete Dunne. I think that'd be a great match and would be a huge star-making night for Pete Dunne to win the NXT Championship on the night of WrestleMania. It'd be cool. It'd be cool for us as British. I'm going to get political. Be cool for us as British to see Pete Dunne holding the NXT title and to do it at WrestleMania. We would then have Drew McIntyre and Pete Dunne holding world titles. That for me would be very cool. Now, with SmackDown, Daniel Bryan and Cesaro having a clinic, one of the best matches you'll see. I was very... It's not often you see matches on WWE that you think could work in any company. And I know that sounds weird because a match is a match, but WWE have a style. So the style that they put was as close to the old Ring of Honor style as I think I've seen WWE do in a long, long time. I was a big fan of it. I think it was cool to see. It's obvious to see Daniel Bryan's influence in SmackDown as well. SmackDown for me definitely the number one show in terms of in-ring quality. Storyline development is very good as well. But there was Kevin Owens attacking Reigns with Edge not declaring who he's going to be picking at WrestleMania. There was a big smile on Edge's face, which I really like. I mean, it's good to see people that you're a fan of actually go out there and have some fun. And there was the triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship, which saw Big E win, which is good. I mean, you want your champion to be winning as often as possible. We also still have the attempt by Bianca Belair to name her opponent for WrestleMania. So they're kind of, for me, WrestleMania is looking quite strong this year. Now, let's move on to AEW. Now, I'm not going to go into too much depth here. FTR have been suspended for 1 week, which is just a stupid storyline. And you can't suspending somebody for 1 week is nothing. It just seems weird. But at least they're not doing it. They've been fined $200,000 work like they did with Lars Sullivan. To me, AEW has looked very weak, and the people who say, "Oh, they're offering great in-ring competition and things are exciting," and I've yet to see that. Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker is something that I looked forward to. It wasn't as good as I thought, but at the same time, give the women more time and they will deliver. There's great talent in that company. It's just a problem of whether they get the time or not. Adam Page and Matt Hardy versus the Chaos Project. You keep putting people in tag teams when they probably should be getting singles pushes. You end up with them not getting the push they probably deserve. I'm going to mention the name of Cesaro, and if Adam Page keeps getting put into tag teams, then he's going to keep getting labeled as AEW's version of Cesaro, as far as I'm concerned. Jericho and MJF brought a full cooler of bubbly to celebrate backstage with Inner Circle. And then we also had the wedding of Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian. Now, let me say, as far as the segment goes, it was done well. James Mitchell was the minister, the sinister minister, James Mitchell, if you will, Jim Mitchell. Now, Miro, who was involved in his own wedding segment involving Lana and Roman Reigns, when James Mitchell said, if there's anyone who objects, speak up now, and then Miro cut him off and said, keep the ceremony rolling, and then they were married. Then they kind of told Charles Taylor to get the champagne so the best man could toast Kip. Miro said his present is his viciousness and power. He pointed to a rat box in the corner and asked what it was. Charles Taylor said it was from him. Miro kicked and stomped the box because he didn't trust anything from Charles Taylor. Miro said it was time for the cake. You can all see where this is going. But he then realized at some point he'd been shackled to the bottom rope. As things began to take a bad turn, Penelope Ford face flopped into the wedding cake. Now, people shat on this when it was WWE. I've seen nothing but positive stuff on Twitter. It's amazing what happens when you can reveal that it's not the product that people hate, it's the company. It was done well for what it was, but it's a horrible segment. It's horrible when WWE does it. It's pointless, and folks shat on it when WWE did it, rightly so. They even had one of the same people in this one. But hey-ho, let's not actually be real and honest about how we genuinely feel about these things. Let's just leave things as they are. Let's just continue to tell people WWE are bad and AEW are good, even though the very things people criticize WWE for is what the AEW roster is doing and getting away with. I like Kip Sabian, like Penelope Ford. Miro is good. I don't understand the need for this comedy stuff. Somebody actually said the other day, this shows long-term storytelling because this was why Miro came into the company. No, this means they told you 3 months in advance that they were going to do a stupid comedy segment, and they did. The same stupid comedy stuff that they have openly said WWE are horrible for. It's not because WWE are producing bad versions. It's because the concept is bad. This, for me, is a huge problem. I grew up a WWE fan, and yes, I probably have a soft spot for them. But at the same time, when their stuff is bad, it's bad, and you just say it. When AEW do something bad, honestly, right, if I was to go and screen cap all of them and put them on, I would fill the screen 20 times over. Yeah, but it was funny. Yeah, it was good. Oh, it doesn't matter if it doesn't advance any story. Or basically, it's bad when one company does it, and it's fine when the other does it. As far as I'm concerned, if you're sat there and you're thinking, well, that wedding segment was fun, it's a WWE concept. The wedding angle is one that WWE made famous badly over the years. So if you support AEW in doing the same stuff as WWE but think one is good and the other isn't, You're an idiot. I don't like idiots. Got enough of them in politics. So a few weeks ago, there was a little bit of a home invasion that took place on the show, and we decided to end the sponsorship partnership with CWF. Now, I did later run a poll to decide whether or not CWF owner Stuart Murphy had actually crossed the line. People decided that he hadn't, but it was felt that the sponsorship agreement that was in place wasn't working anymore. As nice as it was to have money to buy stuff, um, being sponsored by anybody is always a tricky thing because it's almost like you kind of have to be nice to them and you can't call them out on things. With CWF, the sponsorship deal is over. However, we have made amends. We are speaking, and I am still receiving information about the shows, and I'm also receiving things from the mole. Now, one of the things I received from the mole, I'm not going to show the message, but I've now started receiving messages from the CWF Twitter via DM, which means whoever the mole is has access to the CWF Twitter. And to make things quite interesting here, what we actually have is some inside information that I don't think Stuart Murphy wants us to share, but at the same time, I think it's important that we do because we need answers on these things. CWF said they want to be transparent, so let's put it out there and see if Stuart Murphy wants to answer it. Before we do, Stuart Murphy was meant to be interviewed today on the show live. However, perhaps the announcement that we make will make people understand why that perhaps didn't happen. There is hopefully going to be a pre-recorded presence from Stuart Murphy, but as we're recording, we don't have that yet, so we'll see if that's in. So the mole basically messaged me and told me that there's some health concerns for Stuart Murphy. He was actually away getting some tests and stuff today. The concerns revolve around loss of vision and some other issues that could be related to some absence seizure issues. So at the minute, it looks like Stuart Murphy may not make it to show 1 for CWF. What that means overall, we just don't know. It could be a short-term thing. There's still 4 months until the first show. So perhaps CWF have plenty of time for Murphy to get fit. Hopefully we can get some comments from Murphy about that. I have reached out to him about it, and he's playing coy as it relates to that. But what we will do is if we can get some comments from Murphy about that, we will. The other announcement that we have is before we went on air, I was told that the initial plan for the tournament has changed. It was going to be, there was a trophy being designed that was going to be the prize for winning the tournament. And there was a big match plan for show 2 with a talent from America, an ex-WWE talent. And in light of something that CWF has had brought to their attention, they've opted not to book that talent anymore. And instead, to try and make the best of an awkward situation, they've decided to make Show 1's tournament for the CWF title. This is the title that is featured on the CWF Scotland Twitter page. The picture of the design for it is up there. I'm assured that it's actually being made as we speak and will be ready for Show 1. Apparently, they've spent some extra money making sure it gets made on time. And what this means is that it's went from a tournament for an opportunity to a tournament to be a champion. And this changes the landscape entirely. And this means that every single place on that tournament has the opportunity to win a title. Now, in saying that, we do have the announcement for who participant 2 will be in the tournament. And that participant will be announced after this message. Yes, I know. Doing things like that's annoying, but I thought it'd be funny. Anyway, the second participant, their picture will be appearing on screen right now, and we're going to have an interview with them. Their name is Dalen Hendry. So we finally get to make the official and proper announcement for who is participant 2 in the tournament for the CWF title. Now, that's the big part here. Now, I'm not entirely sure Dalen even knows this. Now, that is the giveaway. Dalen Hendry is participant number 2, and he is sat waiting to join us here for a little bit of a chat. Now, we're going to talk with Dalen about how it feels to be in the CWF tournament. But we're also going to talk to Dalen about the fact that there's been some major changes to the CWF tournament. Now, thank you for joining us, Dalen. We do actually have you muted, so if we could get you to unmute yourself and we can have you join the conversation.
Good evening, Martin. Thank you for
hello.
having me on.
It's great to actually be able to interview somebody that isn't Stuart Murphy in relation to CWF. Now, how does it feel to be announced as participant number 2 in the CWF tournament? Now, I do want to point out before we go any further, we've just announced earlier in the show that this was meant to be for a title shot at show 2 for the CWF title. But the change has been made, and now you are fighting for the chance to be the first ever CWF champion. How does that feel?
Inevitable. You see, after 6 years of no opportunity, I am getting my shot. Now, thank you, Stuart Murphy. First of all, I do not appreciate, Martin, how you're talking down about the boss.
Okay, well, to be clear, he's your boss, he's not mine. But if you don't appreciate the way I'm speaking to him, I will, at least for this interview, I will be...
Mr. Murphy gave me an opportunity where not many other people have. So I would like you to respect the man's name. Thank you very much.
Okay. So how much have you been told about the participants of the tournament? The only other person that's been announced so far is Stuart Murphy. And there are some positive words you have. How would you feel if you came up against Stuart Murphy in one of the later rounds? Because I know you guys have not been put in the first round together. So how would you guys feel if you got put together in one of the later rounds?
Have you ever heard the term, man proposes, God disposes?
I haven't, no.
Basically, it comes down to, I have done everything to prepare myself. Now, if I have to face Mr. Murphy in the later rounds, that is for fate to decide. And what fate decides, I will follow.
Well, that's good to hear, because I wouldn't want to think that anybody would just roll over and give away the chance to be the inaugural champion of a brand new company. Now, it would be remiss of me if I have you access to you here if I didn't actually speak to you a little bit about the journey that got you here. Now, you mentioned your 6-year journey and the fact that it's taken you this long to get some opportunities. And that's what Stuart Murphy says that CWF is about. It's about giving people opportunities. So let's find out a little bit about you. When did you start training to be a wrestler?
So originally, I was 19 years old when I first joined the Source Wrestling School. After 3 years training, I had my debut show alongside some notable names in the industry such as Isla Dawn of NXT UK, Joe Hendry of our Ring of Honor. And since then, I have been working myself to the bone trying to get an opportunity. I am working myself to the bone to prove just how good I am. Now, this tournament's my chance.
Well, fingers crossed for you. I just want to ask, like, whose style would you say most closely resembles yours? I don't want to say that you've copied anyone's style, but whose style would you say that is closest to yours?
I've had many influences. Zack Sabre Jr., Daniel Bryan, Jonathan Gresham are probably the 3 biggest influences in my style.
Very much a focus on in-ring ability then, which is a positive. That's something that I really love as well. I love watching good wrestling matches. So When it comes down to your trainers, some of the people who have worked as trainers at Source Wrestling, Mikey Whiplash, Damien O'Connor, Nikki Storm, do you have? I know this is probably going to get you into trouble down the line, but do you have a favorite trainer? Is there somebody who's stood out as a big influence in your training?
All three of my trainers have had a big influence on my style. Um, Damien O'Connor taught me the aggression and my foundation. Mikey Whiplash elevated my technical game substantially. Whether it's a case of teaching me new holds or just new ways of imposing my style. And Nikki Storm's cardio is pushed me into an absolute machine.
Well, see, that's what I like to hear. I mean, I think anybody who learns anything as a university student, I'm being taught by several different lecturers, and you kind of cherry pick something. I'm sure footballers are the same, and you
Yes,
take something
it's
from everyone.
yeah. I mean, you're not going to improve if you're not open to learning from vast majority of sources. I mean, even in lockdown, the, I have bought kettlebells to make sure I'm still in top condition physically. I've I've watched hundreds of hours of tape on any wrestler I could find to keep my mind sharp. I even have brought checked the horoscopes and made sure I always have my lucky item, which today is a stuffed cow, to make sure I have done absolutely everything in my power to become a success.
Well, so will we see a good luck charm with you at the CWF debut show?
It's only right that I do everything. As I said, God disposes, man proposes. Unless I do absolutely everything in my power, that is why fate will always smile down on me.
Okay, I think we got cut off there from Dalen. We will bring him back in another week. But for now, that is the end of our interview with participant two in the CWF tournament. And on that note, let's move very swiftly on to our pre-taped interview with the owner of CWF, Stuart Murphy, who's answering some of the questions that were sent to us. And I'm going to be honest, people opted to send these via DM instead. I compiled them, and one of the names, which he says it out loud on the video. All I will say is this was actually somebody's Twitter name, not their handle, their name, for a couple of days when they initially sent me the question. There was no way I was not going to put that name on. I'm sure you'll guess which name it is when you hear Murphy speaking. But Murphy will be the end of the show. That will be it from us for this week. Next week, we hope to have a little bit more news on Stuart Murphy and his physical well-being. We also hope to have some more announcements for CWF. Remember, the announcements this week, medically, we're unsure if Stuart Murphy is clear to wrestle. We have participant 2 in the tournament, which is Dalen Hendry. And just to round things off, we have announced that CWF have decided that in light of some changes that have had to be made, the tournament is now for their championship. It's not just for an opportunity at an international star, it is to be the first ever champion. They will go down in the record books as the first person to ever hold a belt that they think is going to be one of the most illustrious in Scottish wrestling history. Now, that is it from us. There will be more from us next week and more from CWF. And just to be clear, they're not sponsoring the show anymore. So as long as Murphy plays nice, he will be back next week.
Hello guys, welcome to the Q&A section of the show. I apologise that I can't do this more live, but I do thank you for your questions, which I will now answer. This is only going to be a wee short segment. You'll see why with one of the questions, which I'll leave to the end. But let's get started, shall we? The first question we've got from John in Glasgow. What type of wrestling will be on CWF shows? There's no one way to answer that, really. each wrestler has their own style. So that's just basically whatever talent on show that night is capable of doing. So yeah, there really is no one way to answer that question. But thank you very much, John. Why did you even put yourself in your first show? Are you just copying Jeff Jarrett? Anonymous? No, I'm not copying Jeff Jarrett. I apologise for the loud noises, by the way, when you live in a weird area. No, I'm not copying Jeff Jarrett. For simple reasons being that, unlike Jeff Jarrett in the WWE, I actually, stand a chance of winning the title. No, the reason for it is due to the current pandemic and a lot of people shielding and stuff like that. There is really a lack of roster depth. So why not? Sure, everyone will be jumping at the bit to get to see who gets to beat the boss up. Is there really a mole in CWF, or is it you, Stuart Gillen, from Glasgow? There is a mole. One of the questions that's on this tonight, I'll explain later. I only said to one person, and it got leaked to Martin Anderson, the host of the show. So I now know who that mole is, and they will be confronted and dealt with very, very shortly. Where do you see CWF in 5 years? Well, in 5 years, I hope we're still putting on shows. We are maybe doing weekly. My goal is the CWF run weekly, with monthly pay-per-views. I'll say in 5 years, CWF will be doing weekly shows with bi-monthly pay-per-views. That's the hope for 5 years' time. That's anonymous as well. Who's going to be a breakout star in wrestling this year? Anonymous. Well, I don't know actually. Bianca Belair is going to be a breakout star in wrestling this year. I'm stuck and confused as to who I can think of here. Not really many that I'm picking on that list, to be honest. What side of Glasgow are you on with football, green or blue? Genuinely hope your name's a laugh, mate, because that's genuinely hilarious calling yourself Tatty Tickler, the Celtic fan. Sorry, I can stop laughing at that. What side of that Glasgow with football, green or blue? Well, I hate to tell you this, but there's actually more than just green and blue in Glasgow when it comes to football. And I think that's very bigoted to think that there's only two football teams in Glasgow. There's actually four professional football teams in Glasgow. And I support the side from Maryhill. I'm red and yellow, through and through, and it would never change ever. So I'm not green and I'm not blue, and I couldn't care less for green or blue. I'm red and yellow all the way until the day I stop breathing. But thank you very much. I can see why your name is now Tatty Tickler. We've heard about the tournament for show one. We also know there is a non-tournament main event. We haven't heard your plans for a division featuring the Scottish females. Why not? The reason that there's been no plans for the Scottish females announced as of yet is we want it to mean a lot more. We're putting a lot of build, putting a lot of effort into getting the right females on board for that women's division. I'm hoping to have something in place for show two, but there's nothing as of concrete as of yet. I do want a women's division. I'm not preferring guys over women in any way, shape, or form. I want a women's division, and I want a substantial women's division, and that will happen over time. Right, so we've got two questions now from Martin Anderson, the host. The first of which we're actually going to say at the end, and I'll explain why I'm not doing this live tonight. First question we'll ask is, the real second name the mole has given me is the second participant, Dylan Henry. Can you confirm he's participant number two? Do you know what? If you continue watching this show, if if I'm correct in thinking, this part of the Q&A is actually first. And if you watch this show to its entirety, you will see an interview with the participant number 2 in the tournament immediately following this Q&A. I'm not giving anything away here either. If you stay tuned, you'll see exactly who it is. And I'm looking for more than it for you, so I'll let that answer for you. The last question from Martin Anderson. This is one I really want to touch on a bit. This week I received messages telling me that you have a medical emergency that may see you declared unfit to work at show 1. Can you give us an update on if these are true and how serious they may be? Yes, I can give you an update on that. And I can confirm any reports that Mark Anderson has received on my health and well-being are exactly accurate. I do have, I wouldn't say it's a medical emergency, but I do have a condition at the moment that is under review, and they will tell me if and indeed when I'll be cleared to eat. The problem, I have no shame in telling you, is I am getting really bad head pains, which are stretching down the whole left side of my face here. I've got blood vision in my left eye. At the end of the day, I've got a show to run, but at the end of the day, there's a performance that I need to look out for. I will leave it till the last available date possible before finding a replacement if need be, to find out if I can compete or not. I'm not going to say now that I can't compete, and then find out near the time that I'm cleared, and if I've run for no reason. So I don't want to 100% confirm that I will be competing in show 1, and then get to show 1 and I have to pull out at the last minute. It's not ideal, but at the end of the day, if I'm in the middle of a match, my vision goes in the left eye, there's a big chance that I could cause serious injury or to the person I'm in the ring with, and that ultimately is what we try and protect each other from, and something that I don't want to be risking doing. But yes, it is true, I do have a medical condition at the moment that's under review, and I will keep you updated.